Hey guys, in today's video we are talking about an awesome cichlid, the Geophagus Brasiliensis. I'm going to walk through a care guide and a species profile, how to keep them, how to breed them, everything you need to know about this awesome Geophagus. So let's dive right in. I've kept Geophagus Brasiliensis in the past and they're awesome, beautiful cichlids. And I recently saw some at my local fish store. They had a couple big adults that were really colorful, so I wanted to talk about them today. Geophagus Brasiliensis are beautiful cichlids from South America that have some amazing coloration and behaviors. It is sometimes called the pearl cichlid due to its spotting and spangling along the body, which looks incredible once they mature into adults. The Geophagus Brasiliensis originates from Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, and with such a wide range of collection points, you may see different varieties out there in the hobby. Typically, they will have a tan or brown base, but with light blue spotting and maybe some red in their fins. But some varieties collected further south tend to be lighter and tan, with more reds in the body and fins. But all of the different color varieties that I have seen look awesome in my opinion. Since these cichlids do come from a range of locations in South America, they tend to be super hardy fish that can adapt and tolerate many different environments. But I would recommend keeping them in fresh water around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and I know some aquarists have had luck keeping them in outdoor ponds that get as low as 60 degrees Fahrenheit for some small stints of time, and I've also heard that that helps their long-term health. Their ideal water is around 6 to 7 pH and softer water. However, I'd recommend keeping these consistent to your area and just focusing on keeping your tank cycled with no ammonia and keeping up with your water changes to lower those nitrates. These fish are geophagus, which translates directly to earth eaters, but they don't sift sand quite as much as some other geos. If you've been following along with the channel, you know I love geophagus species. I've had a group of tapajos in this tank, and I have a group of sphinni in this tank, and I have gymnogeophagus in my fish room. And I absolutely love these fish, but they do sift the sand a little bit more than the Brasiliensis. And you'll notice that the mouth isn't quite as turned downwards on the Brasiliensis, and it kind of stands out in comparison to the rest of the geos. And due to some of those differences, and maybe even their colder water capabilities, they may be reclassified out of the Geophagus genus pretty soon. But even with this, they will still sift the substrate some, looking for that uneaten food, and ultimately keeping your sand looking pristine. They will definitely dig pits throughout the aquarium though, so keep that in mind when setting up decor or live plants. I'd usually recommend plants like Java Fern and Anubias that are attached to decor so that you don't have to worry about other plants being uprooted. These are hardy plants that will pull nitrates out of the water column to keep things healthy for your fish, and some other tank setup recommendations would definitely be sand, driftwood, and maybe rocks. Sand is very important to allow for their natural behaviors, but also to prevent any mouth and gill injuries that gravel may cause with them. Driftwood would provide some great cover and a natural look, while rocks can complete the setup. They are normally outgoing, personable fish, but I found if you have hiding spots and cover in the tank, they are extra comfortable and come out more often. Geophagus Brasiliensis can grow to be pretty large, and although most Geophagus species are slow growers, Brasiliensis tend to be a bit quicker than most. The males can reach up to 10 inches, give or take, and the females will stay just a bit smaller. It is pretty difficult to sex these fish outside of just size alone when mature, because both have some pretty great color and size to them. But due to their max size, I would recommend a tank of 55 gallons as an absolute minimum for one adult. If you're going to have a pair, group, or other tank mates with them, I'd recommend a 75-gallon tank at minimum, but as always, the larger the tank, the better. If you have a 6-foot tank, for instance, you could get a nice community going and provide a better home for these guys long term. Geophagus Brasiliensis are semi-aggressive. I would say in comparison to some of your big aggressive cichlids, they're not going to be quite that, but they might be a little more aggressive than some other Geophagus species. I would say the only other Geophagus that kind of rival it is the Steindachnerai, like my female in this tank, but overall it should be just fine if you pick appropriate tank mates. But due to their size as adults and semi-aggressive nature, selecting tank mates can be pretty tricky, I wouldn't recommend any community fish like tetras, barbs, live bears, or any bottom dwellers that stay too small, as these become an expensive snack most times. I would just recommend other South American cichlids first, some that don't become too aggressive. Some great options include the Severums, Uaru would be a great choice, electric Blue Acaras, maybe Oscars if your geo is already a pretty good size, and of course some of those other Geophagus species. Most plecos would also be great choices. Other catfish and oddballs would probably work just fine. Bigger tetras and barbs would likely work well, such as Colombian tetras, Buenos Aires tetras, bleeding hearts, silver dollars, bala sharks, and even tinfoil barbs would work really well. But for a few of those, or even the cichlids, if you're going to be housing them together, just make sure the tank is big enough to accommodate them all. And if you're going to have a tank just for Brasiliensis, I would just recommend one, a pair, or a group of 5 or more. This will usually avoid the odd ratio of fish that can sometimes lead to aggression, especially if you have multiple males fighting for just 1 or 2 females. But typically the aggression with these guys is very manageable, with the one exception being breeding time. As with most cichlids, they become very territorial when breeding. If you have a male and a female, they'll likely clear out an area in the substrate and lay about 200 eggs on a flat surface. The male will fertilize them, and a few days later they'll have fry hatch. They're hit or miss as parents, as some protect the fry really well, while others end up eating them. It's just a hit or miss with some of these guys, and just try your best. Sometimes they'll develop as parents over time, so you might just want to be patient, and eventually you might have some fry make it. But for the best chance of success, I'd recommend pulling the fry out of the tank to grow out separately from the parents. Brasiliensis breed very easily and in most conditions, as like I said, they're very hardy. The main ingredient is just having the male and female. When it comes to feeding these guys, I usually lean towards a protein heavy diet, as with all Geophagus. I really like krill flake from Extreme, they go crazy for this. And I also like to mix in cichlid pellets like the big fella pellets from Extreme. The good thing about the sinking pellets from Extreme is that they sink down to the substrate, and then you get to see your Geophagus perform their natural behaviors of sifting the sand looking for those sinking pellets. I usually recommend just 1 feeding per day and err on the side of less food if you can. For fry or juveniles, you could increase to smaller feedings 2 or 3 times per day, maybe even crushing up flakes and giving them some nano pellets. But I'll leave links to all the foods I use down in the description below. Some of the other foods that's good to mix in with the dry goods is a few frozen foods like brine shrimp and bloodworms. They go crazy for that. It would be a good option to add in every once in a while. But in summary, Geophagus brasiliensis are beautiful South American cichlids that get amazing color, demonstrate some unique behavior. They are very hardy fish that can tolerate a range of environments, and you can mix them with some cool tank mate options if you're careful and do your research. Just have a sizable tank and be ready for a bit of aggression at times, and you will thoroughly enjoy keeping these geos. And if you have any questions about the Geophagus brasiliensis, leave them down in the comments section. Happy to help. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.